What's up, ladies and gents? Welcome back to another SLA video. Alright folks, we have ourselves a common question that's being asked very often lately, and that is, Payne, what's the best new or existing weapon combinations in the game? And that's something that I want to cover because whether you're a new player or a veteran or someone who's just, kind of dabbling in the game casually, weapon combinations play a big role in depending on the content you're playing. Now, there are 3 major universal weapons that have come out, plus a brand new event weapon that just got released that is actually, kind of doing really well, and we're going to actually add it to the list because normally I don't cover event weapons. They're pretty much meme weapons. To some extent they have some use, mostly for the armory, but this new weapon actually is and deserves to be on the list, so we're going to talk about it. But we're going to talk about the first 3 major universal weapons, and then I'm going to actually set up the best combinations of weapons based on elements and overall in a tier list format, so you guys can understand it and see it and just kind of refer to it whenever you need to, and we'll talk about what content it's used for. But let's talk about the major weapons, and we're specifically referring to the SJW weapons. We'll start off with the event weapon, this one here called the Gold-Tailed Fox, that is currently out right now. Now, if you're a free-to-play player, you can push it to about A6, A7. It all depends on your Akari, right? So you get more points if your Akari is more advanced. My A1 Akari allowed me to get this weapon here at A6. I probably could have pushed close to A7 if I had an A2 Akari, but alas, here we are, so A6, but still pretty damn good, and we'll talk more about this weapon. This is primarily used for light weapons, so it's not going to be a universal weapon, but it does definitely deserve to be talked about. But now, let's talk about the universal weapons and why they're actually very powerful. So for the first one, and probably still the main one in the game, and it's an OG weapon called the Demonic Plum Flower Sword. This is going to be the main universal weapon that we're going to refer to most of the time, okay? So this here allows you to do multiple different things. Number one, it increases critical hit rate, critical hit damage. Also allows you to increase the attacks of the user. If you dash, it increases your critical hit damage even further, and then of course increases dark damage by 10%. So this is considered probably, if not the best support weapon in the game by far. A close second though, is another dark weapon called the Moon Shadow Dagger. That's right, another dark weapon to dominate the support weapons. And this is, again, there's 3 major universal weapons, and we're going to revolve the list around them, okay? So the Moon Shadow Daggers actually do have the same effects in regards to increasing dark damage, but they do a couple different things. Number one, they do slow down time. Number 2, they increase the damage taken by the opponent up to 3 instances, 10% per instance, and that will actually go up based on your advancements. It also increases the dark damage, of course, as I mentioned. Right here, you guys can see you can stack up to 3 times, and then the actual damage increase goes from 10% to 15% with an increase of 45% total, which is pretty damn insane, but it is only a duration of 3 seconds on the opponent, and it is a debuff versus the Plum Sword, which is actually a buff to you, so keep that in mind as well too. The beauty of this one also, you can apply instances of lunar eclipse every time you do shadow step at A3, and then of course your team members will now do more damage as well by 15% when the time slowing effect is active. So very important, and one of the best, if not, I'd say very close to the best support weapon in the game next to the Plum Sword, okay? And then lastly, we have ourselves the Tethys, I can't say this ever, Grimoire, which is essentially the water Grimoire, as I like to call it. And this one here actually does do a couple different things that's pretty cool. Number one, it has the freeze control effect. It does do an AoE, and it's not a conal, it's a straight AoE. When this effect does land, it also does 10% more damage on the opponent. The target equal to 10% of their damage taken during the duration. So whenever you do damage with this erosion effect, or called cold ice effect in this case, the opponent takes more damage, equal to 10% of the damage they've taken during that duration of that freeze. And then, so the problem with this one here, of course, is if the opponent can't freeze or can't get frozen, this doesn't really apply. It does have the deep erosion effect, which is actually what you're really looking for, and this increases elemental weakness damage taken by 24% for 15 seconds. This is the icon you'll see on the opponent. Primarily, honestly, this is nowadays used mostly for guild boss. Increases water damage by 10%. When the cold ice effect ends, it increases the damage taken by 20%. So right here, again, the frozen effect, right? And then this last one here increases damage dealt to frozen targets by 50%. So not quite as strong as the Plum or the Moon Shadow Dagger, but still considered one of the best universal weapons in the game for how you build around it. Okay, so now that we have those out of the way, let's jump into the actual tier list format and look at all the best weapon combinations you can use in the game, period. All right, folks, so we're back here again. So this is what we're going to do. We're going to make this pretty simple, all right? We're going to cover only the SSR weapons and a couple honorable SR weapons for SJW. Everything else is just noise, so you can avoid everything else. This is my usual tier list for weapons. So we're going to organize it as follows. Universal support, okay? These are the 3 universal weapons I just explained to you guys in the video format. So we're going to do best overall combinations, and then we're going to do best combinations for each element. And then I'm just going to quickly talk about where these combinations can be used and why they're so powerful, okay? So best combinations currently in the game are as follows. Believe it or not, these two together are 2 of the best combinations by far. And the reason why this works so well is because they go hand in hand. They complement each other so well. Moonshadow daggers are amazing for mostly single target. Can do a little bit of AoE if they're clumped together, but the actual plum sword does incredible AoE damage. So we have ourselves really, really good AoE and single target damage. Also, because they're both dark, they complement each other. Plus, they also do the crit damage, crit rate, attack up, plus damage increase, plus dark damage increase, right? So 2 of these together, believe it or not, as universal weapons are some of the best combinations in the game, especially if you're fighting games, modes like Baron, or any type of POD, for example. When it's Dark Day, these 2 are the best, especially when you're combining them with skills that are dark elements, such as magnifying slashes, dispersion, etc. Right? So 2 of the best combinations in the game right now. But let's just go ahead and go without the 2 of them together. You guys already know this. When it comes down to the combinations, the best, we're talking about the best. We're not talking about just like what's the best elemental ones. We're talking about the best combinations of the game. We're talking about these 2 together right here. DKD and Plum Sword work incredibly well together. So keep that in mind. So very, very powerful. If you're looking for another really good combination here, you can go Plum Sword with the new Wukong staff. Another really good combination, right? And you guys can see here, this is of course going to be the mainstay for most of the content here when we're talking about the possible best outcomes in the game. If we're talking about additional damage here, we can do Westwind if you're looking at an SR, plus the Plum Sword, which has been the classic to finish most of the game and most of the content in the game. And another really powerful one, of course, is going to be the Plum Sword with the Phoenix Bow. Okay, so very strong as well too. Now, when it comes down to the Moonshadow daggers, there are a couple elemental weapons that work really well with it as well too. Like you can use Moonshadows, for example, with the DKL. It works really well. Good, two slow weapons. This will slow down time, of course, and increase the damage with DKL. DKL also works really well with this as well too, right? So again, very powerful. Best combinations of the game though pretty much are going to be the following. Okay, put Plum Sword in front as the mainstay weapon. You can do, so again, we're doing best combinations. It's going to be these ones here. Okay, so let's go ahead, Moon, there it is. And then Westwind, where's Westwind? There it is right there. I'd say this right here is probably your best bet combinations. All right, if you want to do like a couple different ones with Moonshadow daggers because you don't have Plum Sword, then again, like I said, Moonshadow you'll put in with DKL. You can do Orb of Avarice, Grimoire, etc. Right, so there's a couple really good combinations here with that. But for the best ones in the game, this is it by far. You're not going to get better than that. All right, so there you guys go. Those are the best combinations. Now let's talk a little bit about elemental ones, okay? And these, by the way, those combinations can be used pretty much on anything. POD. Guild Boss, we're not going to say that just because there's a specific combo for Guild Boss, but for POD and WOBL or any story mode content, those are the best combos, okay? Now let's talk about Dark. Okay, so if we go Dark Element. So Dark Element, as mentioned, these 2 together, incredibly powerful. You can also do Plum Sword with Zeke's or Moonshadow. These work well together as well. You can do right there, those 2. You can do Plum Sword with Scythe. Works really well together as well. So Plum Sword with Scythe. And then, of course, last one here is going to be Plum Sword with Moonshadow daggers. Okay, so those are the main combos right there. You're just not going to get better than that. Right? And this is why dark weapons are so elite. They pretty much are the best SSR weapons in the game for a reason, and it's almost not even close for the most part. All right, so there you guys go. Those are the best dark elemental weapons. There's really nothing that's going to come close to that, but these 2 together are probably still by far the best ones as a combination. All right, let's talk about Light. Now, believe it or not, Light actually has a new little friend. We can do Plum Sword, or now we have ourselves the Golden Tailed Fox, the new event weapon, which actually is really good. Now, these 2 combined with the the Wukong staff, the best combination you're going to get in the game when it comes down to Light. Next up is going to be take this away for a second. Put this, I should leave it here. Put these 2 together with the Guild Spear, and I've been using it quite often on my free to play. Works extremely well. These work really well. Now, I would say Plum Sword I'd remove if you're going to put this together. I'd say more like this. This also applies to this, but then these 2 together work really well. And then lastly, the Reroll bow here is actually very powerful. Put it with the Plum Sword, and then the Huntsman. I'd say Huntsman, honestly, because of the amount of times you can shoots. I think that's a good combination there, or this combination. So these are the best right now, but I would say definitely the new SSR weapon with the Wukong staff is up there for sure. So this works really well. Now, if you are looking for elemental damage, you can also throw in this Grimoire here as well too as a backup support if you don't have the Plum Sword to do more elemental damage by 20%, right? With the deep freeze, or deep erosion, I should say, sorry. So this is actually a really good combo here as well. Moon Shadow Daggers work really well too, but again, this is more amplifying dark damage, but that extra 45% damage increase in overall is still really nice. It just requires a little bit more love in terms of advancements, but these right here work really well. And again, you can see Plum Sword pretty much doing all the major lifting here, but don't forget this new event weapon. It's actually really good, okay? So there you guys go. Pretty easy on that one. We'll put these back here. Put this back here. I'm going to put these actually to the side here so you guys don't have to see them. And we'll put back we'll put this back in here. I'll put this in here as well too, actually. Now these two here, as a matter of fact, you can use all three with this, to be honest. All three work really well. I would say in terms of like order, 1, 2, and 3, Phoenix Bow, Orb of Avarice is still, I'd say, the best one, the best combinations here. You're not going to be able to get better than that. Now, realistically, sometimes you can even use these two together and still dominate with the both of them. But ideally, you'd want to have this or this with it, and then also this a little bit if you want to slow down time and still do that extra damage, right? So all three universal weapons work really well, but these two weapons here are by far the best fire weapons. Honorable shout out to the Grimoire. Can work decently well, but not as good as Orb of Avarice, and it's by a long shot almost, guys. So there you guys go. That is the fire weapons. And then lastly, we have the last two elements, which is wind. Wind, pretty straightforward. DKL, DKD by far is much better. And then ideally with this one here, you want to go with this, and this one here, you want to go with that. So this is how the combination would work. You'd go this with DKL, and this one with DKL with Moonshadow, and then DKD with Plum, right? So Dick with Plum and DKL with the Moonshadow. So that's the best combination there. When it comes down to wind, honestly, Westwind is incredible still, so don't neglect it. If you're gonna go with any order, you would put Plum Sword with this, and you still have the best wind combo, one of the best wind combos in the game that can still probably finish most content. So there you guys go. That is the best win combinations right there. And then lastly, water, of course. I can't neglect water, obviously. Water is interesting. So personally, if you're going to go Grimoire with your water, I would actually do Moonshadow Daggers here. Grimoire, obviously. These two combinations work extremely well together. Scatty's kind of a garbage weapon, so I'm not going to even put it up there. Just a quick honorable shout out with this Falcon. If you do have it, the Frozen Falcon, it does do decent damage, so you can use that if you have to. But realistically, this is still the best water weapon in the game. We're overdue for a water weapon at the moment, but this is the best combination here, I'd say, for water. And it's not even close. Everything else pretty much sucks. Like Kasaka blades are not bad, so don't get me wrong. They're not the worst, but if you're gonna use that, then you're better off using Moonshadow Daggers with them, or the Plum Sword really works well as well too. Scatty sucks, but if you have no choice but to use it, you'd probably want to use the Moonshadow Daggers with the Grimoire, or Plum Sword with that as well too, right? So I would even go like this. Right there. All right, last thing I wanted to talk about before I ended this video is what to use in Guild Boss. Now, Guild Boss is specifically depending on how you set up your SJW, but most people run SJW as support. So the main weapons to use for Guild Boss for best combination is going to be the Grimoire and the Moonshadow Daggers. You guys can check out pretty much any of the SJW Guild Boss videos that I made, or anybody else's videos, as a matter of fact, and you'll see that the Guild Boss mostly runs this combination because you get the Deep Erosion, which is going to give you guys that extra 20% elemental damage for all your units, including yourself, plus the Moonshadow Daggers to amplify that extra damage by your team by 45%, right? So very important, or by you and your team by 45%. So getting these two as your main Guild Boss weapons is going to be the best one. Now, if you plan to run a DPS version of SJW, then you want to actually run this instead, Plum Sword and Moonshadow, because you're going to be running Magnifying Slashes in the legendary version of it, so these two work together. So again, even though they are the universal support weapons in the game, they're also the best weapons in the game, probably by far, actually, to be quite honest with you, and they amplify everything else that you have as a weapon. Alright folks, this is Payne. Thank you again so much for watching. I'll see you guys in the next video. Take care.